Hello there once again, and welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. Glad you're with us. Kent Myers is not here today, but he usually joins me as we introduce topical guests and talk about issues that are important to you. And today we're going to meet Joni Brooks. She is the new publisher of the Journal-Record, business newspaper in both Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So we'll get her background and her views on where the publishing industry is headed in the state of Oklahoma. It's all coming up today on The Verdict.
I've known I was going to be an artist since I was a little kid. I still have teachers that in grade school that still have my artwork. I think I told them something along the lines, this is keep that, it's going to be worth money someday. I'm Justin Mader, I'm an artist, and I'm Chickasaw. My muse is the Muskokean, Mississippian art. When I see that, my mind just fills up with bubbles of ideas. My big thing right now is shell carving, the shell gorgets. My work is refined more and more until I found my own rhythm. I also do metallurgy, where I've been acid etching copper and hammering copper to make a copper repoussé. You only have one chance to do it right, so it requires a lot of planning and thought and just patience. My Chickasaw heritage is the foundation of who I am. It's the roots of where I come from, and it inspires me as an artist and inspires the tenacity of never giving up.
Learn more about today's Chickasaws at profilesofanation.com.
It's a North American energy revolution. We're the fastest growing source of new oil and natural gas supplies in the world.
The shift to North American energy will create approximately 3 million jobs.
All that money we've been sending overseas, $400 billion a year. Imagine that staying in our economy. It's a game changer.
Real energy independence starts now. And it starts with Oklahoma.
Our guest on today's edition of The Verdict is Joni Brooks. She's been a newspaper publisher for 30 years and working in community papers. And of course, the reason she's on the show now is because she is the new publisher of the Journal-Record. Let me tell you a little bit more about Joni. Grew up in rural Iowa, a graduate of Iowa State University. She has a BA in advertising, design, and journalism. She spent 14 years in Iowa as a publisher of daily papers, and then went to Chicago, worked for a large suburban daily, and then to South Carolina, where she was a publisher. And most recently, she's been in Yuma, Arizona. And so now she takes on a really a strong management team over at the Journal-Record, yes, which serves Oklahoma City and Tulsa as a business publisher. So welcome to the show and welcome to the community.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
I always think it's good to find out where a person came from, because I think life experiences shape the way they view the world. And you grew up, you told me, in Rock Rapids, Iowa, and I'm embarrassed to say I've not heard of it. Tell me about Rock Rapids.
It's a very small town, about 2,500 people in the northwest corner, bordering South Dakota and Minnesota. My dad was a farmer, and so I grew up on a farm raising cattle and crops and a very strong work ethic. Our household was a two newspaper household. The whole time I was growing up, my dad was an avid reader, and that's kind of how I got into the newspapers.
And which papers was he reading in those
The
days?
Des Moines Register and Tribune at that time. We also had the Afternoon. Then we also did have local newspapers as well, two other weekly newspapers.
And when did you get the journalism bug?
Actually in high school. I started out at the high school newspaper and started being the cartoonist as well. I always had a creative flair, so when I went to college, that was my goal, to become a newspaper reporter, actually. And I took all of the journalism and ethics classes and then decided that I liked the creativity and the sales part of advertising better, so I moved over to the dark side, as they say.
And your first job was?
As a sales rep at the newspaper in Clear Lake, Iowa. So.
And what's it
being
like
part of
selling ads in Clear Lake, Iowa?
It's
Easy
great.
sell?
It's an easy sell because there's one community newspaper, and businesses believe in the power of reaching their audience that they're interested in. It's a great way to meet, all of the business people in the community and to get connected very, very fast. So I've always enjoyed that part of it a lot.
Take us through the evolution of newspapers over the 30 years that you've been involved in the publishing.
Oh my gosh, then I'll be aging myself, but we always kid in the newspaper business about the days, it used to be the days of lead type. I'm not quite that old. However, I did see the installation of, very big computer systems that took up whole rooms, and waxers, which we used to paste down copy on pages. We used to cut color with X-Acto knives and do all of those manual processes, and eventually everything has moved from computers, to do everything computer to plate, and the presses have evolved as well. So it's been exciting changes in terms of the workflow.
Community newspapers, are they typically daily or weekly or monthly? How would you describe the frequency?
Community newspapers depend on the size of the community and what that community can support. Usually in smaller communities, it's a weekly newspaper. Larger communities can support the dailies, and so that's generally the trend.
And as far as revenue that comes into these smaller papers, is it largely coming from advertisers or subscriptions?
Usually about 80% of newspapers' revenue comes from advertising.
Does that vary from a very large paper to a very small paper?
It's pretty much the average. Some newspapers have a bigger niche, in a certain kind of advertising, but subscribers usually only pay for about 20% of the cost.
Your career has taken you through community newspapers, which is different than a large metropolitan day like the Daily Planet, where Clark can't work. Much different environment than in your work. Why have you decided to go that route?
It was a new challenge. The CEO of the Dolan Company called and asked me to come out to Oklahoma City and take a look. The niche of business was very appealing to me. The market was very appealing. It's an exciting time to be in Oklahoma City, and so I just thought it was a new challenge.
Well, how is the job different from being a community publisher to a business publisher?
Well, I laugh because talking to some of my former colleagues in Yuma, Arizona, I told them that I was missing the letters to the editor and the people who would call up and complain about the horoscopes. So some of that contact with the general public I miss a little bit, but the exciting part of being in the business news is there's just a lot going on every single day. And so that's fun.
Yeah, people really complain about the horoscopes?
Oh, they do.
Yeah, never
Among
even thought to
a number of other things.
complain about my horoscope. You mentioned a dynamic time in Oklahoma businesses. So how does a publisher, how does a business journalist react to a lot of development and a lot of new businesses being created?
Well, hopefully we're not reacting. We like to think of ourselves as being proactive. We are very fortunate at the Journal Record to have a really tenured staff. Our reporters have an average of 15 years experience here, so they're really well connected in the communities across the state, especially in Oklahoma City, of course, because we've been here for over 100 years. So they are really connected to the people that are making the news and have a long experience in the industries that they're reporting about. So it's we're never lacking for news.
Yeah, are people calling you and your staff hoping to get in the paper, or are you calling them trying to create a story that you can put in your paper?
It goes both ways. It goes both ways. Yesterday's edition was all about veterans and the different businesses that veterans are in and just how the community is supporting veterans. So that was a project that one of our reporters wanted to do, and so we started assigning stories out to make that edition happen. So in that case, we're going out looking for those stories. But other stories are called in to us. We have a lot of great sources.
How is the business model changing for your publications in that we have a generation of people who think content should be free and they want to get it on their phone or certainly on their computer, and not necessarily in a physical paper of newsprint that arrives at the door?
Yeah, it's a real transition time for all newspapers. The biggest mistake that we made was making content free in the first place on our websites. Content has a great cost, of course. Personnel is our largest cost of doing business, and what we do is original. So it needs to be protected, it needs to be paid for, it has value. We are finding audiences that are leaning more and more towards digital and towards mobile especially. So it's an important part of growing our business, but the print is still traditional and still is the mainstay.
Mm-hmm. How many copies a day do you all publish?
We put out about 3,300 journal record, and then we also have hundreds of subscribers online as well. So our research indicates that our newspapers are shared a lot, especially among offices. So research says that our audience is about 20,000 readers a day.
Mm-hmm. Which industries seem to draw the most readership?
Oh my gosh, I think it's very varied. Of course, energy is huge. Legal is also huge here. There's just a variety. You know, and we're not writing for the industry to find out about themselves because they know what's going on. We're writing for the rest of the community to find out what's happening about other industries, and that's kind of our niche.
You've been in the business long enough to, and it isn't just business, but you know there are certain times when it seems like all the news is bad, you know, and economic collapses,
Sure.
and then there's other times that, you know, kind of a boom time mentality. Which is better from the publishing standpoint? I mean, if
I don't know if there is a better. You know, certainly there's more of a reluctance to talk when the news is bad. So it's easier to report good news in that way. But people are interested in what's going on, no matter whether it's good or bad. And as long as there's transparency and you can get the real story, that's what counts.
Yeah. On the advertising side, I would assume your demographics are favorable and are appreciated by a lot of potential advertisers.
Yeah, we are really fortunate to have a highly affluent market. You know, that is our audience. People that sit on boards of organizations or, you know, own companies. It's just a very high income demographic and a lot of disposable income, so that is very favorable as far as selling advertising.
Is the advertising growing on the digital side?
It is, and we will have more digital platforms to offer as well. That's part of our growth plan for 2015.
Creating more inventory.
Yes.
We're going to learn more about that. Joni Brooks is our guest today. She is the new publisher at the Journal Record, which of course publishes a business newspaper in both Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We'll find more from Joni after this.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett minus Kent Myers this week. Kent has the day off. And our guest is Joni Brooks. She is the new publisher of the Journal Record, the business newspaper of Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Talk a little bit about the legislative report that you guys are getting ready to put out, because gosh, the session will be here before you know it.
Exactly. We're gearing up for session now. We have the Journal Record legislative report, both online, and then we do a tracking service for the lobbyists and legislators themselves. So We've got a staff of 4 dedicated to that, and also Marie Price, who everyone knows is a Capitol correspondent and does great work for us. We also hire a lot of interns for the session so that we can sit in on all of the committee meetings and do real-time reporting, which is extremely important to the lobbyists and legislators, and that's our mission.
Well, it sounds like quite an emphasis.
It is an emphasis. It's a very important part of our business. It's one that we've spent some time developing over the last couple of years, and now we've got a product that's really great, and we're looking forward to everyone using it this session.
Well, and businesses and industries are really not much different than my perspective on municipalities, because sometimes we're on the offense. We have legislation we would like to see that could improve our situation.
Right.
And other times we're on the defense. Somebody's trying to impact one of our revenue streams, or in some way can restrict what we can do.
Exactly.
And so the offense versus defense, is that something your staff kind of gets into?
It is, and we get into it for our customers. So we'll be sitting in those committee meetings until midnight or however long it takes, and then getting that news posted immediately so that they've got what they need to use on the floor the next day.
I suppose a little bit it's about just holding legislators accountable.
Exactly. Yeah. Transparency. It's a big theme throughout newspapers.
How have you found the journalistic environment in Oklahoma City now that you've worked in so many other markets and come here? What are your impressions of journalism as a whole, not just inside your building, but around the market?
I think it's a vibrant market for newspapers. As I said, there's lots of news going on. I think the community is very interested in what the newspapers have to say and what they're reporting in. Wide variety of news available, and obviously, the city as a center of government is really important to what goes on throughout the state. So we have statewide reach, and we want to serve that whole community.
Almost any guest we have on, we talk about the next generation, the millennials. How are millennials going to change what you do?
I think that we'll see more digital use. The mobile phone especially is where people want to read that news. As people age, they do get more interested in the news that's going on around them and how it affects them and their families, and especially in the business climate. So we do see readers that may not have picked up a newspaper when they were 18 years old starting to get there when they're 35 and 40 and finding out that, yes, they need to know.
Yeah. Do you encourage your reporters to visit with people in person or to do interviews on the phone? Obviously you can do more if you're in the office on the phone, but there's a personal touch that can be gained from a in-person interview. What's your preference?
We do both, but they like to be out in person at the site talking with the person themselves or the organization, because you do get more of an interview. You establish more of a relationship, and you can take that going forward. So personal is always better.
And it's a visual world, and one thing I've noticed is more and more reporters having a camera with them and taking pictures themselves.
Not only pictures, but video.
Yeah.
Everyone's got iPhones now, and you just snap the video and take it and post it online. So it's another initiative we'll be
I'll call them Cub reporters. Are Cub reporters now expected to be able to handle the visual side as well?
Yes. Yep, they can do it all, and that's part of the goal, is to send someone out and come back with a complete story, not just written, but visual as well.
And so when they come back, is it typical that they might have a print version, I'll call it a print version, a written version, and then also have still pictures that are going to accompany the story, and then also a video version that might be on the digital side?
Yes, that is typical, more so in community newspapers right now. We're getting there. But we also have photographers that go out with the reporters to shoot, better pictures with better cameras as well.
How much of your content would you say is feature-oriented, and how much of it is breaking news-oriented? Do you try to have a mix in that?
There is a mix every day. I think the term breaking news is kind of overused, but everyone likes to be first with the story, and we had a couple of big ones already this week. But it's a mix of local news and wire news that we feel is important to the state. Breaking news when we can get it.
Yeah. There's also, I guess, the realization that it's almost impossible to break news on a daily basis, because with Twitter and social media, things break on a minute by minute basis. Does that change the way you report and write and produce a headline?
It does, because we will post it first on the website. So as soon as we know, it's going to be posted, and that's where it breaks. It's got to be that way because we're going through the printing cycle overnight. So it will change the headline a little bit, but there are those traditional readers that still want the story in complete detail in the newspaper the next day.
How often is it that you will get a lead or a tip on a story through social media or a blog or some sort of tip that came to you through a digital process?
More and more. It's becoming more frequent. We monitor all of the blogs and have connections with people on social media that feed us news as well. So it's becoming an important part of what we do.
Yeah. Describe the staffing that you have. Trying to serve 2 markets can't be an easy task.
We have a smaller staff in Tulsa, but they're very well established. And then we've got a great staff in Oklahoma City, along with the staff that serves the capital. So our news desks are about the same size as the business desks for the World or the Oklahoman.
And is the content the same in both markets?
It is, because we basically have the newspaper that serves both markets and statewide. So the interest is there for the same kind of news.
You know, I hadn't really thought about statewide. So you intend to cover the medium-sized cities out there as well as the metropolitan area in Lawton?
Yes, and in 2015 we'll be doing a focus on a different community around the state every month. So we do reach out and try to include all of the communities in the state that are making news.
How does the energy industry to cover? It's such a large presence in our market. Do you see any specific elements of the energy industry that levels itself to a specific type of journalism?
Numbers, you've got to be really savvy with numbers in the energy business along with some of the other industries. But keeping the connections and the experience as far as knowing backstories, I think is the most important thing, because reporting on that type of an industry takes a long time. You need to know the background, you need to know what's happened in the last 2 years or 3 years to realize the impact of what's going on now. So experience probably plays the most into that.
One of the items that people like to read is something new that is coming, and that gets into to real estate and real estate sales. How many of your tips come from people in the real estate industry who know people are poking around and thinking about doing something?
A lot of tips come in that way, and we keep very close connections with the commercial and residential real estate markets as well. We also do a special publication for them called Square Feet every quarter. So we do focus a lot of attention on commercial real estate and what's happening and who's building and who's selling, and it's a part of our daily cycle.
I'm sure you get a lot of opportunities to interact with people who are thinking about entering the journalism profession, especially being a woman publisher. What's your advice to young women who might be wanting to get into the business side of the industry?
I think there's still a lot to love about journalism and the newspaper business or the media business in general. People are always going to want the content, and it's important to their daily lives, no matter where your niche is. And I think there's a great future ahead.
Yeah, and what are the hours like in a business journalism?
The hours in business journalism, I have to say, are a little bit better than in community newspapers. I would get a lot of phone calls at midnight or 2 a.m. in the community newspaper business. Not so many in the business journal.
Well, congratulations on the better work environment. You've spent some time in Arizona, in Yuma, it's your most recent stop.
Right.
Compare the environment in Yuma from a quality of life standpoint to what you've seen in Oklahoma City.
Oh gosh, very different. Yuma is a community of about 200,000 people. Great focus on agriculture. It grows the 95% of the world's lettuce between October and March. Also a huge influx of winter visitors, about 80,000 between October and March. So it's a very tourism-oriented market, also military. There are 2 installations there. So some similarities, but unemployment in Yuma was about 29%.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Wow.
A lot of that is skewed a little bit by the agriculture market because of the seasonal workers that come in during the winter time. But it was an area of high unemployment and struggles to get industries in and just keep things going. So the Oklahoma City is very refreshing in that manner, and like I said, it's an exciting market to be in.
Well, Joni, it's great to have you in Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
And, you bring some fresh ideas, and I know the readers of the Journal Record appreciate the work that you and your staff do. Please pass along our compliments.
I certainly will. It's a great team.
Absolutely. Joni Brooks, today's guest on The Verdict. I'll be back with the final word right after this.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We are wrapping up a show where we met Joni Brooks. She is the new publisher of the Journal-Record, which is a business newspaper in both Oklahoma City and Tulsa. So glad she could come by with us. She also left a copy of last year's book of lists, and I'll hold it up just because I think it's such a good publication to have on your office or at home. But just as I open it up, here's a list of environmental firms in the Oklahoma City area. Here's venture capital firms in the Oklahoma City area, depository institutions. They send out questionnaires to public and private businesses throughout Oklahoma City and Tulsa, gather information, then put it in a list that makes it so easy when you're trying to get more information or do business with someone. It's the Journal-Record's Book of Lists, and it'll be out here later in December. Let me give you some website information. The Journal-Record has a website which is the journalrecord.com. That's journalrecord.com. You can go there and find out more information about Joni and her staff. And we have a website here at The Verdict. It's called theverdict.tv. You can go there and ask us about a guest that you'd like to see on an upcoming edition or suggest a topic that we can get into. Next time, hopefully we'll have Kent Myers back here. But in the meantime, I'm Mick Cornett. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of The Verdict.